Hey, this is Lindsay, and here's my opinion on the 2019 Honda CRF450L. The spot where we filmed this, we kind of rode what I considered more of just a basic dual sport ride out of my house, down a couple roads, up a canyon, and then played around a bunch of single track, a little bit of fire roads, and then also off camera I got to take it for a couple more days and ride some more traditional desert riding and a lot more enduro or just really extreme hill climb conditions, just to try to get a very broad opinion of this bike. Straight out of the bat, it fits kind of the Honda DNA mold. It feels a lot like a 450 when you first sit on it. The overall ergonomics, the placement, everything is very natural if you come from a moto background, have ridden their bikes. I am really stoked that they waited until this generation, specifically a 450, to base the L off of. It does have its own specific frame. It is a little bit wider. It houses a little bit wider engine case for a 6-speed transmission. But the frame itself has been very specifically designed for the L and the X for their specific needs. It's not just a takeaway from the R. They've done everything they can, even though the frame looks similar. It's kind of like when they did the original 450X back in 05. It and its 450 were actually quite a bit different when you rode the chassis, and that's how this bike feels. The power was interesting. Yes, it's not what the R is. Currently, the 19R is the powerhouse of the 450 class. Finally, Honda has stepped up to that mantle. This bike is very mellow. It's still very broad, but it's just down-tuned across the entire board. It is very torquey, very easy to ride, and honestly, for the majority of dual sport situations you're in, it's still more power than you need. I never ran into, other than the softest, steepest hill climb I found, I never ran into a lot of situations where I wanted, or per se needed, more power. There's definitely places where I wanted a little more of an aggressive hit, something that was a little more punchy jump around. Coming from a moto background, I definitely enjoy a dual sport bike that can be very comparable to a motocross engine. But for what most people would ride this bike in, it was really easy to ride. Where I found it the most enjoyable is the transfers from your fire roads to your street conditions is where the bike really shined. I was very impressed with the layout of the bike and the power in how well it laid down on the street, and also just the lack of vibration. It was a very comfortable bike to ride long sections of highway, get on the freeway on. It has just enough to get up and go on the freeway. It's definitely nothing special once you're up and trying to maintain a freeway speed. You don't have a lot of extra power left to do anything, but it's comfortable to ride at that pace. Now, talking about the weight, there is a few standout things that Honda will admit on this. They definitely went to the farthest end of the spectrum with this dual sport bike. A lot of things like all the plastic guards you see on the bike, the rubber inserts on the sprockets, the chain guide system, everything they've done with rear taillights. They really went to the very dual sport version that was a little more of the street oriented crowd with this bike. So there is a lot of weight there, but it's because they overbuilt it in that sense. But compared to other dual sport bikes I've ridden, it was very quiet. It was very well maintained on the street. So Honda definitely hit their point there. Now, how does that affect off-road riding, of course? I know people hate to hear this. I know they hate to hear, oh, it doesn't feel as heavy as you would think. And it actually doesn't in this case, and for two reasons I can say. The first is the suspension components. For a dual sport bike, they didn't go to a cheaper fork and shock. This is basically the exact same components off the CRF450R. There's a little bit different fork lug for the speedo sensor, but the cartridge, damping rod, all the pistons, all the components in the shock, they're the same as what's on the motocross bike. So it has a very capable damping characteristic, and that's what I liked about it. It's still very plush enough to ride off-road, but it ramps up very well. And the biggest thing is it's well balanced. It maintains its weight very well, or masks it in a way, because it doesn't dive an extreme amount under braking. It is soft enough, but the bike, in my opinion, stays very balanced as it squats down and comes back up into the stroke, or out of the stroke per se. And that's really what maintains that weight, because you never feel the yaw factor. Yes, it has a lot of that weight and it's really placed out the back. And if it had a much more cheaper or softer setup fork, you would probably get irritated by the weight because it would be constantly overriding the front end. But in this case, they've been able to keep that balance, and it masks that at most times. A lot of your single track, a lot of your flowing roads, you don't notice it. The biggest place I did find it, of course, is places where you are stop and go and you need to do physical work. When you're on steep descents for a long time and you're really trying to grip and maintain control of the bike, if it's a very loose descent, yes, you start to feel that weight in the rear trying to come around you a bit. There are places is when you're stopping in rocks, putting your foot down, trying to kind of pop the bike up, or if you flat out have to get the bike and lift it up, yes, that weight is very noticeable at those moments. But in the majority of cases people would ride this bike in, it's not going to stand out as much as you would think. So I think an interesting thing to answer is, what does this bike cater to? Like I said, when Honda did this, they definitely overbuilt it for the situation of the person that's gonna ride it longer on the road, a lot longer dirt sections. And it's because they have a very spread model range. They have the R, they have the RX, they have the X now, and the L. If they would have made the L too trail focused, it really would have overlapped with the X. So the L is very street focused, very dirt road, fire road, more that very traditional dual sport, like more of a step up from somebody that's ridden a lot more of the smaller bore dual sport bikes. But what I really like about this package is I think it's an extremely capable bike to build upon. There's some really cool options out there now with exhaust and ECUs to get power out of. Now, admittedly, most of them are probably not legal in most states, but people are gonna do what they're gonna do. There's a lot of ways to strip the weight off it. Guys like the Enduro Life page on Instagram, check those guys out. They've done a lot to cut the weight off the bikes, and there's a lot of ways to get it off very easily. So what I like about it, in its current trim, it's of the 450 dual sports I rode, it's the one I would pick to do a long haul trip on because it's so comfortable and it's so easy to manage on those longer trips. If I really want to not go the full length of like a Africa Twin or one of those big full-size adventure bikes, this is what I would pick. But it also, in my opinion, makes for a very easy project bike to cater more to a very off-road situation because, like I said, easy mod suspension, easy to cut the weight, but the biggest reason is the suspension components. It's so easy to take that fork and shock and throw the same setting in it. You would run in an X, an RX, or an R for each of those specific situations. So like I said, at the end of the day, yes, the Honda has its negatives, but I think the positives can really outweigh it. And in my opinion, of the 450 or that around that CC range of dual sport bikes on the market, I think it's honestly the most capable and it's the best platform to build from.